Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As the title goes, we are going to be talking about the evolution and future of generative AI with our esteemed panelists. So first things first, I'm going to give an intro of the host, which I myself am affiliated with, Mitacs. Some of you may already be familiar with the entity, and I would like to give you a bit of a context as to why we are interested in the topic of generative AI, as I'm sure many of you in the audience are. So generally speaking, in Mitacs, our purpose has been to empower Canadian innovation through partnerships between academia and industry to drive economic growth. And the vision has been to catalyze the Canadian innovation ecosystem by bringing the world-class, diverse community of innovators that we have in academia to deploy them towards economic growth on our industry side and in our entrepreneurial scene. And for that reason, we sit in, I would say, in the midst of the innovative ecosystem that connects industry, R&D leaders, entrepreneurs, and entities that are affiliated with the government. And as you will soon learn, and you possibly already know, we do have representation of all the leaders in this ecosystem in our STEAM panel today. And we pride ourselves in the active network that we lead nationally within Canada that spans in academia and industry alike. When it comes to artificial intelligence, it would be possibly of no surprise to our audience here that many of the projects that we have seen, I personally have seen as the AI lead nationally in Canada, have recently, more so increasingly, have something to do with AI, either in the specific sector itself, where it comes to the fundamentals of AI, but more so in AI adoption by the industries that have been following the trends. More specifically, when it comes to Mitacs, and we are one of the players in the ecosystem, we've so far, during the past 5 years or so, invested more than $200 million in AI projects alone, and 65% of these projects and investments have been led by SMEs. And these projects have connected, as we have talked about, the academics nationally with industry partners. And I'm not going to bore you with the numbers. And all this to say that we place ourselves very much as an ecosystem connector to be able to connect research labs nationally known, such as Mila and Vector, whom we have the privilege of hosting, to other leaders today, to academic partners, as we have Professor Bang Leo in our STEAM panel today, and also on the entrepreneurial scene, the startups and SMEs, such as the entrepreneur Nicola Nadeau, who is very much well known in the ecosystem, and today really serves as one of these connections and to start the conversation on how each of our ecosystem players have, in their own experience, seen and observed the trends within generative AI adoption, and how they foresee the challenges and benefits and opportunities for AI, specifically generative AI, moving forward. And with that, I will actually leave this for the interest of time, leave this slide behind, and we can come back to it later on. I gave a bit of an introduction in terms of our panelists, but I would love, I'm sure our audience will love to hear from you in terms of your background, though I'm sure you all do not need introductions, but it would be nice to put some context to the names and affiliations. So I am going to start by the order that I'm seeing actually on my screen, if you don't mind, and ask Nicola, if you don't mind, to go first and give a bit of an intro on your background and expertise, please.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm Nicholas. I'm a CTO and serial startup guy focused typically on AI, hard tech, emerging technologies. I was once myself a Mitacs recipient, so it's nice to come full circle. And my PhD and background is actually in AI and robotics, where my research then and now really focuses on AI and human system collaboration, how we can work together with these intelligent systems to, better perform jobs and operations. Currently, I'm leading innovation initiatives as the CTO of Smart One AI, a global data and AI solutions provider headquartered at the Mila AI Institute in Montreal.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nicola, for that introduction. And next up, Warren, if you don't mind going next.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Mitacs for hosting this event today. Warren Alley, and I'm Director of Industry Development at the Vector Institute here in Toronto. And I lead a lot of our outward-facing activities with enterprise companies, both here in Canada as well as from around the world, and primarily working on expanding and growing our ecosystem through corporate partnerships at an enterprise level. Happy to be here today and share some of the things that we've been doing with our broader ecosystem.
Wonderful. Thank you. Bang, if you don't mind going next.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Bang Liu from University of Montreal and Mila. So I'm an assistant professor, and my research is primarily focused on natural language processing, large language models, AI agents, and multimodal embodied learning, as well as like applying AI to different scientific domains, especially material science. And I have collaborated with Mitacs, and through Mitacs, I collaborated with many different industry companies working on like several different applications. So it's my pleasure to be here and discussing the development and future of Gen AI with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's our pleasure to have you here. Mariam, last but not least, please go ahead.
Sure. I'm Mariam Mullah Mohammadi, a responsible AI advisor and researcher at Mila. I'm involved in several responsible AI initiatives within Mila, but more focus on giving SMEs responsible AI consultation on how to adopt the principles in their product workflow. And since responsible AI is very much multidisciplinary field, I should say I have a technical background and more so on translating what social sciences would means in terms of algorithmic design. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mariam. Okay, so let's start, let's delve into the conversation. I'm very keen on picking your brains about all things AI, and I would like to give a bit of a format to our conversation in terms of looking at AI adoption and generative AI adoption as a timeline, and delving into your expertise and experiences so far when it comes to AI adoption, mostly for organizations that say may or may not have mature technical teams. How have you seen this adoption so far coming along in their journey? And if you were to give suggestions for those who have not yet moved into that direction and are keen to go towards that direction, where would you start? So if you don't mind, Warren, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, I get to kick off this discussion. So uh, there's a couple of different ways you have to look at it, and it's not just about the organization's AI maturity, capacity, and competency, but it's also about the industry in which they work is influencing their progress. And so for us, the work, as Miriam was saying, and as some of our other colleagues have talked about, is you have to start with an inward-facing lens as you go forward. If you don't, it's the safest and most secure way to get started, and it has the least amount of external risk, if you will, with regards to what may happen with a customer, client, consumer. And so those initiatives then require some form of governance or some sort of strategy internally to help you move forward. You're going to find very little success if you don't put some guiding light or some milestones in place to move forward, because there's so many different activities and applications where Gen AI could be applied. And depending on your industry, if you are in, if you're in manufacturing, or if you are in a very consumer focused business with lots of customer engagements, there's a lot of different ways that it can be applied in your work streams internally as well as with your external practices. So for us, it starts with uh, setting up some good governance first and foremost. And whether it's from a technical lead or just an overall senior level decision-making lead, there has to be some accountability and responsibility at the senior level to help to give power and empower to those below that are going to be the more active developers. And sometimes that requires a technical team because you're building internal platforms and models, but it also requires some sort of internal champion, because even if you're not developing stuff internally, if you don't have a champion that can be that person to connect with those third parties that are helping to integrate Gen AI systems internally, and you're kind of at the mercy. And there's nobody that we're talking to that's doing this nefariously. I mean, of course, there will be nefarious actors in this space, but if you're working with a third party, if you don't have some sort of internal framework that you're basing your decisions on, you're kind of at the mercy of what they feel is the right course of action for you, and you lose some of the power in it. But that's where we start with. We could talk more in your other questions, but I know our other panelists have some great ideas on this too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Warren. And if I may, I'm going to piggyback on what you noted in terms of embedding AI within different industries, something that we also are seeing a lot within Mitacs. And to me, it resonates with the part of me that is very keen, and I know Nicola is championing the human-centered AI. So embedding AI within the ecosystems or contexts that sectors have been operating in, not adding it as a burden, but more so putting as a tool that is centered towards the users of it within different industries. And Nicola, in your experience, Smart One or otherwise, I would love to know more about your essentially like your take on how human-centric AI may mean when it comes to AI adoption by different industries.
And that's a great point. Is everything's human centric. There's one belief I have right now is that the current wave of AI and everything like that is a new design paradigm. It's a new design challenge. That AI is just a tool, and generative AI is a really strong tool. It's a really good hammer. But we shouldn't be going around looking for nails. We need to really understand the problem space and the people and the users that will be interacting with these systems. And whether it be internal stakeholders and users, they're just a different set of customers, and understanding them as a customer journey and their needs, their requirements, what essentially will sell to them and solve their pain points day to day is the core reason why we build these systems and deploy these systems and bring value to internal customers and external customers. And then on the human-centric side, not only understanding who we're deploying to and how they're interacting with, but understanding what goes into the AI. Are we bringing the right voices and the right data and the right context into building these AIs? If we're deploying these systems internationally, what are the nuances between different geographies and demographics? How will users respond, interact with the system? But also, how will we train, annotate, and prepare the data that will go into it? It's a holistic consideration from end to end that has a lot of complexities. But at least if we enter them into this problem space with that mindset already, we can start asking the right questions. It's, it's a long journey, but we have to be explicit and aware of what considerations we need to take into account before we necessarily get started. And it's a bit of that measure twice, cut once mindset.
Yes, I cannot agree more so on the front of AI being a tool that can be utilized in many ways, and specifically can be utilized rightly so when we ask the right questions and looking at the problem, not falling in love with the solution. And talking about data and using the right data model when it comes, and that I cannot help but to think of responsible AI and how does that play out in the AI adoption, say how you see, Mariam, have responsible AI played out. I'm going to actually make it very broad of a question. How, in your vision, have bringing the right models, like how do you translate that?
Great question. I think this can be achieved through setting an internal AI governance as well as product-focused responsible AI practices. And the AI governance, by that I mean, is about creating a foundation through oversight, through policies and procedures, accountability mechanisms, all of that, which this can be done through several frameworks that are out there, but it really needs that customization to foster the company's culture and risk tolerance, the domain application, and all of the regulatory frameworks and standards. And after that, thinking through the product itself, we should think through every stage. We have so many choices to make, and that would translate how to view it from responsible AI lens. And that really needs resources and willingness and buy-in from management to foster that change. And I think you were like alluding to the shift of narratives of how to make this not in a sense of this is innovation versus responsible AI. Actually, responsible AI, I see it more as an investment that companies can make to go and benefit from it in the long run. So yeah, there are so many pieces that should like move parallelly to see the real advance in responsible AI.
I'm going to follow up on that, Mariam, and ask you about possible good examples that you might have seen, specifically on the good investment, if you can elaborate on that, or give us some effective AI governance tools that you might have seen or in organizations experimenting with new AI. How does that balance? And if you agree with the balance between innovation and risk management, because I'm hearing that investment in responsible AI, partly, and correct me if I got that wrong, but it's more so sort of a scalability, a futuristic vision. How do you see that balance? And do you have any good examples to give us?
Of course. So in terms of good examples, like there's a NIST framework that I really like. It has several functions, a map function and govern function. And the govern function is all about how to make that process of governance and how to think through and make it like customize it through your company's culture, value, domain application. What is your risk tolerance? Because we always have some sort of trade-offs when we speak about responsible AI, and what you sense, like what do you define as cost, basically, on that front. But and what was the second part of your question, Shabnam?
Well, I think you answered it fully, because it was essentially the balance between innovation and risk management. And would you agree that responsible AI it goes through the risk management part of the equation, or am I, like many of the mainstream thinkers and observers, are getting this part wrong? So that was a
Yeah, to that point, I see cost as a function of several factors, and we are very focused on short-term benefits, or like we define success in a way that is not including responsible AI metrics, whereas what I see in the future with the upcoming regulation in Canada, we have IDA Act and BLC 27 and all of the things that are coming on. We should take into account that other factors that will inspire by responsible AI in their success metrics in companies, in product KPIs, all of that. So I don't necessarily see it as a trade-off, but we should include and think about it. It adds more complexities, but I think it's we cannot avoid it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mariam. Changing gears a bit, moving towards the lens of AI adoption, what we have seen so far, to the innovations that may be coming up and the trends and success stories so far that may lead themselves to future innovations. And I would love to hear from you, Beng, in terms of your focus on research on language models and AI, and how you are seeing the future trends developing into the industry from academia.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first aspect is that now people are utilizing generative AI for different applications, right? So the most popular application is, like, for example, generating artwork like images, videos, 3D objects, and so on. And this is quite attractive, and which accelerates the production. And in the meantime, it's also applied to, like, scientific domains. For example, through Mitacs, I have collaborated with some company working on the, let's say, the material discovery. So if you think about it, like, there are many ways AI can help. For example, there are so many different types of large amount of data, and AI tools can accelerate the automation of data preprocessing, like extracting valuable structured data from large amount of online data set as well as private data. And in the meantime, it can also help, like, fully utilize and manage such amount of data to produce, like, candidate material structure based on user desired properties and so on. And the similar story happens not only to material science, but also to health domain, for example, the drug discovery, medicine, and so on. So that is one part, which is about the generative AI applied to different applications. And the second part is about, like, how to expand a large language model into a more, like, fully automated agents. So if you consider what is a large language model, you can basically communicate with it, right? Just like you're talking to a human. But for agents, it's more like to have a stronger ability in deliver more complex tasks. For example, you just give a command, give me some software which can have some functionality. And previously, maybe you're talking to a LM and help you to write the code. But now you just need this single query, and it will deliver you the final product, which is a software. So to accomplish such kind of complex task, it will need us to equip the raw language model with more sufficient equipments, like the memories, tool sets, and many others. So if you think about language model is a brain, and agent equip it with a strong body so that it can operate on more complex tasks. So that is what I see. So the generative AI to different applications, and the expansion of the AI abilities through the agentic style design.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'm going to pose this as a controversial question, because we're now talking about the future of AI and how it's going to automate more complex tasks as we move forward. And I'm going to be an unbiased the observer here and ask, what do you think about the doom scenarios that we're hearing in terms of generally speaking, what we need to be careful of when it comes to choosing what tasks we all automate and what not. And just opening the floor, if anybody would like to take a stab at the questions, I would love to know what you think.
So I could jump in first. For me, the doom scenario is lots of hallucinated and low quality data and reports and all that coming in. It's not so much, replacing our jobs and work. It's that our overall output will be just terrible. and copy paste, we already talk about it as an idiom when we speak, as ChatGPT text and things like that. You can tell already when people have put low effort into it. Some of the media has called it AI slop that's passed on the internet, where it's just low quality filler content, and that's what we'll be getting into. What we do have the opportunity to have is essentially, as Bang mentioned, agentic-based AI assistants. Who can we rubber duck you with and brainstorm with, so that we can get to the concise point quicker, get straight to the meat of the argument. That's what I look forward to the most. The inverse of that is, just more filler content that's low quality.
Hmm. I appreciate the thought of the AI slop. That's an interesting notion. Warren, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, part of the value of Gen AI is when you know what good looks like. And so people that are utilizing it to support, creating code and everything else, if you know what good code looks like, and then you ask Gen AI to build you some code as you're building out more complex processes, then it's a good tool. But if you don't know what good code looks like, and you ask it to do something and build you something, and then all of a sudden you get it and you just throw it in. It's the same thing when you're doing, as Nicholas is saying, it's like, if you don't know what the real or what a good answer looks like, and you just ask it to do something. I had a funny story where a friend of mine's kid got into a little bit of trouble. And so he said, okay, you got to write me an apology letter. If you would have seen this letter that this 13-year-old kid put together, it could have been a Pulitzer Prize winning thing. But he totally used ChatGPT to create this letter for him. And it's just like, he sat there and he presented it. My brother was laughing his tail off. He's like, okay, you obviously have no idea what you've tasked this thing to do, because this thing came out written like you're handing in an essay to defend a thesis. So you kind of have to know what good looks like when you're trying to do it. And with regards to the doomsday scenarios, I mean, there's been technology advances throughout the years, and you can go back as far back as fire. Fire can do a lot of bad stuff if you choose to use it in bad ways. But if you choose to use it in positive ways that create value and improve society, you can find it. And so where I get confidence from, and I hope your viewers pay attention to this, is there is a wonderfully strong and responsible AI ecosystem that's leading the world here in Canada. And our colleagues at Amy, our colleagues at Mila, and especially those here at Vector are really driving this home in all aspects. And so when you're looking at building out frameworks, and you're looking at building out adoption, and you're building out new applications, you can rest strong in that you're doing it in a region where the leaders are leading things in the right way. They're doing it thoughtfully. They're doing it insightfully. They're doing it in engagement with the regulatory bodies. They're doing it through engagements with um, uh, enterprise level corporations, as well as startups and SMEs. And they're starting it with the first principles that responsible AI is the foundation. It's not a thread in it. And so that's where the confidence should start. And so, we can always look at the bad actors, but at the same time, when you have so many good actors here, then that increases your confidence and should also increase your risk tolerance in this specific field, knowing that you're dealing with leaders who are taking that very seriously and building things appropriately.
If anybody wants to take another stab at the conversation, but I think that was a mic drop by Warren. Mariam, do you want to go?
I think you phrased it very well.
Yeah.
It should be any kind of AI tool, solution, product should be treated as an assistant or tool within already existing ecosystem. And that ecosystem includes people, the systems of hierarchies, the power dynamics, the different industries. So it's much more complicated than, and it's not about a standalone AI product. It's about the systems of people and industries and how we navigate those kind of relationships. And always having human in the loop would help, as we have already. Yeah, but Warren, yes, of course.
Bang, please go ahead.
Yeah. So from my point of view, that if you consider what AI can bring to us, it's actually it enables us to be more creative and manage much more complex stuff with a small team. So if you think about what is the essential of intelligence, it is actually like the ability to making decisions and find the kind of the optimal path to reach a target, just like playing a goal, right? So previously, like if you think about how we interact with LM, we use what we call the prompt. And actually, if you can clearly define your prompt, clearly tell the LM what you want to do, actually you knows how to do it. It's just, it will take you a lot of effort, a lot of time to do it. But now, if you with AI assistant, actually it can help you to reduce the time and the cost to deliver the target. So in this case, actually, we can scale up the ability of a human being by copilot it with many AI assistants. And people also concerned about the safety issue. I feel like it's the double-blade. If you are using some new technique, it can be quite helpful. In the meantime, it can cause potential risks. So I don't think AI will be like the, let's say, the killer for humans' future. Instead, we need to, it's good to see that we are aware of the potential safety issue and people are working on that to ensure the safety, to ensure the reliance and so on. So basically, I'm positive towards the future of AI development.
Wonderful. Thank you all for that beautiful notes. And if I were to summarize notes made in my head, at least, it would be having a human in the loop, good actors, as Warren called them, from the decision making in terms of what models, what data, what purpose this models are used to avoiding sloppy AI outcomes. And with that, I would like to move to a more of a greener space in terms of the success stories on using AI, more so on scaling AI in industries that you've seen. And I would like to divide it by saying either for larger enterprises or SMEs that you have seen, and more so on the type of scalability that you've seen. Either it could be workflow automation or other industries. So I would love to know more about your observations of success stories so far, and piggyback on that, on your guess or best estimate of what industries would be adopting that scalable AI or workflow automation next.
I can start quickly. So here at Vector, we are fortunate to be working with 31 large enterprise partners that cover a broad spectrum of industries. We are also blessed here in Canada that we have 5 major banks that, based on third-party reviews, they all rank within the top 50 globally in terms of AI development and adoption. And you have RBC, which ranks number 3 amongst them. And so when you're looking at a specific industry subsegment here in Canada, you can look to our financial sector to find leaders that are making their mark around the world as AI developers and adopters. And so it's not a surprise that the financial sector and healthcare sector, they've been working under strict guidelines and rules and regulations for years now, and they have high degree of compliance necessary to be able to do anything new. And so they've been able to create a risk management structure that is uniquely positioned in this space because, Miriam, you were talking about these things. You require transparency, you require accountability, you require paying attention to privacy. You have to have things based on democratic values. Need to be people first. And so they have all of those things embedded pretty much in everything that they have to do. And so because of that, they've started, and you will find that yeah, when you're coming to leaders, they're based on their size, yeah, compared to their peers around the world. They're much smaller, but they punch well above their weight when it comes to their actual development adoption. I'll start with those ones, but there are other leaders that I'm sure our colleagues can talk about.
So I'd love to jump in and talk about a bit. That's a great example of a larger corporate enterprise that has these systems and processes in place. And that can be very daunting for a lot of SMEs, especially. So, we spoke about before going in with a clear head and understanding your stakeholders and ethics and the basics of it. Still having that bit of that agile MVP mindset. Find a couple champions in your enterprise to just try things. And you don't have to reinvent your whole organization around generative AI or these crazy complex systems. Find one dull or dear task that causes a headache and see, is there a way that this can be made 5% better, a few percentage points, just to build that appetite and get that flywheel going of where else in my org. And so a great example is I was working last year with it's called an energy transformation company in the construction industrial sector that realized that their top RFP people spent nearly a couple months per RFP proposal. And a lot of it was copy and paste from previous RFPs and then, changing the wording to fit this particular case or searching back in their documentation for what did we do for project XYZ 10 years ago? Is that relevant for this? And so this is where, modern day generative AI, RAG systems, you hear all about it, are really for is, can we automate the 80% of the work that is honestly dull, boring, and repetitive and tedious and the copy and pasting so that the team can focus all their time on that 20% that really differentiates them and lets them win those RFPs and those contracts. And so they went from a few months of time per RFP to a few days. And that gap in time was now spent on quality, was now spent on the human creativity and intuition and deeper research to differentiate their RFPs, their proposals, and their content from the competition.
I love that, and I just want to point out a quick note. I think in conversation with Warren, you mentioned, and there's a Google Canada report mentioning that AI can free up to 170 hours of employees' time. So unlocking new values, and I love that point made by Nicola in freeing up more, I would like to call it human aspects of the role, not replacing them, assisting them to do what we do best better. Warren, do you want to add?
Just a couple of points on what Nicola was saying. And so you also don't have to frame it as you alone in a vacuum. And so before I joined Vector, I was working in the automotive parts and technology sector. And so, I'm pretty sure people are well aware of the highly integrated supply chain that exists from all the way from resource extraction for materials and structural, and even now as you get into batteries, into the power gen in the vehicle, all the way up to the final assembly. And so you've seen now it started with the scope 1, 2, and 3 when it comes to your ESG or your environmental footprint, and you as a sub-supplier to a tier 2 or a tier 1 or an OEM, you had to be very much understanding and aware of your environmental footprint, because whatever you're doing impacts your either your upstream suppliers, your downstream customers, and fellow suppliers. And so that then, that took many years, but we started to be able to measure it. And then you can also start to determine your performance. That was followed, a while after, but it started moving into EDI efforts within organizations. And in order for you to maintain your supplier relationships, there were certain things that you had to do to maintain your compliance with, again, different suppliers or different financiers or what have you. And so it required you to start measuring and demonstrating results. And so these things, especially with what Miriam was talking about, and Nicola, what you're trying to lead, and of course, Bang, with your research, it's how are we going to start measuring results in these spaces? And so whether or not you're an integrated manufacturing supply chain, every single company is going to be part of a data value chain. They're going to be creating one internally, and you're going to be involved in one either with a customer or within your various network. And so you're going to have to start being responsible in these ways because people are going to be depending on your data at some point in time, either internally or up and downstream. And so when you start looking at that lens, you could also see where maybe some of your customers are doing things and where might we start being able to create value, not just internally. And I like your dull task, Nicola. In auto, we were talking things that are either dull, dirty, or dangerous. And that's where automation was. And so obviously we know what dull is, we know what dirty is. Dangerous, there's a lot of different things. There's physical danger, but then of course there's security of your data. And so those were low-hanging fruits, but you could also look to see what's going to start creating value for either some of my sub-suppliers who's got to start feeding me, and I'm going to need their information to be more nimble and flexible. But also, what am I doing with my information to provide my customers with additional value too? So there's a couple of different lenses that you can look on it where the creation of value is happening. And yes, that report is really good. And there's other ones too. There's a conference Ford of Canada that talked about Gen AI in terms of improving our productivity to add 2% to our GDP. Lots of information that's out there, but I like that opportunity to build on what Nicola had said.
I want to do one quick bounce off what Warren said. Data is a key component of this, and it's often talked about way too late in the process. We can do all the generative AI, we can do all the cool technologies we want, but if your data is still on paper copies in a filing cabinet somewhere, you're going to have a hard time with that. So digital maturity, some digital transformation, and just getting your data relatively in one place in a digital form is a fundamental step to get moving forward with any AI project. And so ask yourself before even getting started on some of these AI projects is where's my data? Is it accessible and can I leverage it?
Yes, great point. And digitalization is often the bottleneck in many of the SMEs that I personally work with. And it's further down the chain that needs to be taken care of before moving to using AI tools. And on that front, I'm taking the last 10 minutes to hopefully ask my final questions and delve into some of the questions that is asked in the chat. And on that front, related to the topic of data, Mariam, specifically, I think it will be geared towards you in terms of the biases and well-documented biases that we see in data. And more specifically, I think if I were to chime in, I would say health data has been known very much to be biased. And when it comes to gender biases, even from hospitals to hospitals, and how you have personally, the question is from the organization's standpoint, but you as an advisor, I would love to know how you tackle these challenges when you come across them.
Great question. I would add that what makes a data set a perfect data set is really context dependent. And the ethos of generalizability that we have is in contradiction with that. So just to balance that, just to realize that we never will have a perfect data set, and we are repurposing our data from this application to that application and all of that. Of course, we say, let's debias the data as much as we can, as much as we have domain knowledge. But after that, the important piece is to understand the role that model design choices and technical elements would play in make the underlying data composition and just to make it like worse than the situation, or like helping with the debiasing throughout the pipeline. In bias and fairness techniques, we say there is 3 intervention points. One is pre-processing techniques, in-processing techniques, and post-processing. Pre-processing is all about data debiasing, data processing, all of that. In-processing is making sure that we have some sort of fairness metric in our model design choices. And pre-processing is about when we are tweaking, in a sense, or making sure the outputs of our model and system is respectable to and in compliance or what is out there, and we can measure that. And with that, I would say it's all about understanding that both the role that both data and model design choices play, and the synergies that they have on each other. Even like the simple techniques, as I don't know what is the audience of this, but if you're a technical audience, you would know that even more subtle choices like learning rate or compression techniques or early stopping techniques. These are the kind of choices that would affect long tails of data. And long tails of data are usually associated with underrepresented groups. And like just understanding what we are doing with that synergy and the role that we play with the choices that we make through the data and data processing and model design choices really matters. And like fairness is a huge topic. And in generative AI, of course, like stereotyping, demeaning, like lots of categorizations are out there, is a huge topic. And yes, hopefully it's something that is getting more attention.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mariam. And to answer that question, about risk factors, I would like to draw everybody's attention the resource that Mariam kindly put in the chat box. I'm sharing it again. It's from the U.S. Department of Commerce, if I'm not mistaken, Mariam.
Yes,
NIST.
it's
It's a guideline in terms of responsible AI, correct?
exactly.
Wonderful. Okay, so with that, and I'm going to, in the interest of time, unfortunately, delve into our last question, which specifically narrows our focus on AI in Canada and how we are doing things, any call for action, and what can we do better. And I would love to start with Bang in terms of your experiences in research and how we are internationally known for being at the forefront of AI research. Our esteemed Professor Jeff Hinton from Vector University of Toronto just won a Nobel Prize for his effort on that front, and congratulations on that, by the way, Warren. And well, it's affiliation. And
I think
yeah, so what do you think we can do better to stand out more, and what are we doing not in the best way possible?
so first I think actually Canada it has many advantages compared to many other places in the globe. So if you think about the deep learning pioneers, like the 3 the Turing Award winners, like Yossar Benjo, Geoffrey Hinton, and Ian LeCun, 2 of them are from Canada, and LeCun is closely related to the other 2 professors. So from my point of view, actually Canada contributed a lot to the development of deep learning technique as well as more other AI techniques. So it is quite attractive to the AI talents from all over the globe. So the many students who want to apply to Canada, like especially through like Mila, Vector Institute, Amy, and so on. And the second advantage is like if you think about the current cost of AI, a large portion of it is due to the energy consumption. And actually, many companies are considering like deploying their business in Canada due to the energy cost here. So in terms of the path which we can further improve, like the first is like actually CFAR is also working on this. So as we know, right now the language models needs the support of many computational devices, especially GPU clusters, right? So compared to United States, I think we have less available GPU, which is available for research and development, especially for the academia. So as far as I know, CIFA is trying to acquire more GPU resources and build a national cluster to support that. And another is, I think, we can have, which we're already doing very well, but it's always encouraged to have better communication between industry and academia, and more activities such as seminars, conferences to encourage the communication within Canada and across the globe. So that is what I'm thinking about this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Any other thoughts on what we can do better on nonprofit fronts, on academia, on research funders, such as ourselves? Warren?
So this is a personal opinion versus something that you would attribute to Vector, but one of the areas where we can do better is when, especially now, is what can we do to help support Canadian industry utilizing assets that we have at play? And so both from a procurement side, so how can we help AI SMEs and startups by giving them some revenue options? So grant and funding is good. A lot of the VC areas and supported companies now are looking at the revenue side. So that's one. And then just with our data, we have some of the best data when it comes to its diversity, in terms of its robustness, in terms of its, you know, what we were talking about before, in terms of its, you know, there's bias, yes, but because of the breadth and depth of its diversity, it's going to be more opportunity to benefit from it. So how do we start utilizing our data assets to support these companies as well? And that comes from public sources, it comes from private sources, and how do we use trusted parties like our researchers that, you know, Bang, we have here, like our enterprise, like our institutes that represent broader ecosystems like Mila, Amy, and Vector, and utilize that to create economic development opportunities, while at the same time creating better outcomes depending on whether it's health, societal, education, opportunities for diverse thoughts and people. Start utilizing those in that way, because you can do good while doing well. You can do good business while doing good practices too. And so how can we continue to drive leadership on that front?
That's a great quote, Warren. We can do good while actually doing good. Nicola, if you would like to share, because your opinion on the SME front as a veteran entrepreneur would be very timely here.
Yeah, no, the connection to academia and industry is about actually making connections a lot of times. We often live in different silos, especially on the AI front. All the incredible research that's coming out, the latest papers, that often doesn't have any benefit to the actual industrial SME world. And so understanding that what you might read in the latest blog posts or papers, I don't want to say doesn't matter, but that there is a lot of practical AI that's good enough to get the job done. And don't be scared away. Don't see it as a daunting task to catch up to whatever the latest and greatest NVIDIA or OpenAI is announcing. But there's a lot of practical AI that's available for the everyday user to just get those 2%, 5%, 10% gains, just get that flywheel going. On a more practical advice, to toot Mitacs' horn, working with granting agencies, co-op students. I love co-op programs. I wish more professors and academic institutions would push co-op programs as part of the mandatory thing. Mila has their co-op. I came from ETS where I did my doctorate. All the engineers go through co-op. that connection between universities and day-to-day problems in the industry is key to aligning the interests of both sides.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Nicola. And for our last note, Mariam, any call to action on your side, specifically when it comes to responsible AI in SMEs front and connections to academia?
Sure, I'm thinking what to add and what is mentioned. It was cool. But I guess the final note would be just not think as responsible AI as something that is like preventing innovation or like creating more complexities. Is just a matter of how we shift that narrative, and we can include those and be proactive rather than reactive.
With that, I would like to thank all our panelists for their time and contribution, and the insights shared has been invaluable. Personally, and I'm sure our audience learning from you all and your diverse expertise and backgrounds. With that note, I would like to add a quick point about Mitacs. It's been a privilege to host you today. And thank you so much for all the attendees to be part of this important discussion on generative AI. In this ecosystem in Canada, we are all partners in the innovation space, and it's through this connection, as pointed out, and our shared network, that we can have hopefully bigger impacts while doing good, as Warren noted. And at Mitacs, as you probably know, these partnerships are at the core of everything we do. So if you're interested in learning more about how Mitacs is making innovation to reality, specifically on AI, you can scan the QR code and stay tuned for more news on our efforts on the AI side. With that, again, thank you to all our panelists, and thanks everyone for joining.